You are listening to Lighthearted, the official podcast of the United States Lighthouse Society. My name is Jeremy D'Entremont. Welcome. I hope you've all been having a great 4th of July weekend. Today is July 6th, 2025, and this is another edition of Lighthearted Light, where we look back on conversations from the last 6 years of this podcast. Today we're going to listen to an edited version of a conversation that was first heard in episode 40 of Lighthearted back in late 2019. Our guest is Don Terras. Grosse Point Lighthouse, located at the southern end of Lake Michigan in Evanston, Illinois, was established in 1873 as the primary lighthouse marking the approach to Chicago. The lighthouse stands 113 feet tall and is constructed of Cream City brick encased in concrete. Since 1983, for an amazing 42 years, Don Terras has been the chief administrator of the Lighthouse Park District, a unit of local government in Evanston, Illinois. He is also the live-in manager of the Grosse Point Light Station Museum, essentially serving as the modern-day keeper. The interview you're about to hear was recorded in the museum in the former keeper's house at Grosse Point Light Station. Also taking part in the conversation is Jeff Gales, Executive Director of the U.S. Lighthouse Society. Let's listen to our conversation with Don Terras now. My mind was blown by the fact that you have been here for 37 years. How did you come to be the director of the Lighthouse Park District? Did you have an interest in lighthouses?
Actually, no. What interested me was the ability to manage my own historic site. I was greatly influenced by the maritime history of the site and, developed an interest in that later on. But to begin with, it was more the management of an historic site, a museum.
Don, this is Jeff with the Lighthouse Society. At 27, was part of the job living at Grosse Point?
Yes, it was.
Was that appealing to you?
Yes, it was. We talked yesterday about some of the reasons that people like myself, like Lee Radzik at Split Rock Lighthouse, who just retired after 36 years there. A lot of times, I think most of the time, to be frank, it's not exactly for the love of the job. There are other personal reasons. I remember being here for 20 years and saying to myself, I should be going somewhere else. And then it was 25 years and I should be going somewhere else. I've written a couple of books on lighthouses, articles. I've done lots of research. And every milestone I think I've made along the way, I think to myself, I should leave or I should be doing something else, but it never took place. As I was saying the other day, there are love interests involved. And, when you're 27 years old, I wasn't married. For some years after that, I remained single. And, the life of a single lighthouse keeper is interesting, to say the least.
Yeah.
In terms of people's attitudes about, let's take people's attitudes about lighthouses. How has that changed? How have you seen that changed?
Oh, it's just amazing. I feel very fortunate to have come into this position at the time that I did, because lighthouse preservation and a greater appreciation for lighthouses was just getting off the ground. We had the nation's bicentennial in 1976 that really energized a lot of efforts to preserve historic landmarks. I think people became more aware during that period of lighthouses and how important they were to the maritime history of not only the United States, but the Americas and around the world. And that really helped energize, I think, the entire lighthouse preservation movement. But you had that to begin with. Then a little later on, you had the bicentennial in 1989 of the United States Lighthouse Service. There was a conference in Washington. I mean, I became good friends with lots of people that were in on the ground floor, and I was right there at the same time, and felt like I should do what I could to help a national effort. The late Ross Holland told me one time that he thought the lighthouse community was very parochial in its the way it went about helping each other, which meant that people didn't help each other. And I've always been of the mindset that the more we work together, the better things are going to be.
Why was this lighthouse built in the first place, if you could kind of sum that up?
The catalyst for Grosse Point Lighthouse being constructed was the seeds for it really were set in 1860. In 1860, a passenger steamer by the name of Lady Elgin was leaving Chicago, heading for Milwaukee, and on its way back collided with a lumber-carrying schooner called the Augusta. The Augusta hit the Lady Elgin, which was a side-wheel paddle steamer, below the water line. The captain of the Lady Elgin, a very, very highly respected individual, made a wrong decision and thought that the damage was a lot less than what it was. The winds had picked up. It began to rain. The storm was fast approaching. There was this convergence of everything bad that was going to happen. There was very little damage to the schooner Augusta. She lost her foremast, and that was about it. And the captain of the Lady Elgin, a guy by the name of Jack Wilson, sent the Augusta on its way. And by the time they found out how bad the damage was, it was too late. They were out of range to be signaled to come back. So in the end, to make a long story short, the catastrophe gained national newspaper attention at the time, overshadowing the Abraham Lincoln, Stephen A. Douglas presidential race, and really set the stage for a call from the citizenry of the North Shore here, and even Chicago, for there to be a lighthouse placed as a guidepost. Not that that would have helped that particular incident, but people felt that that there should be a light guiding the way into Chicago's harbor. It didn't take place until 1873 because there was a little conflict called the Civil War that intervened. But after that, things moved along, and in 1873, the lighthouse was constructed as the leading navigational aid into the port of Chicago. Most people don't think of the Great Lakes as having very busy ports on a par with New York, San Francisco, and New Orleans, but at that time, during the 1860s and into the 1870s, Chicago had the busiest port in the country, which is made all the more amazing by the fact that we have something here in Chicago that's called a winter. Maybe some people realize that. And the shipping season on the Great Lakes is only 8 months instead of 12 months. So Chicago was exceeding both New York and San Francisco in some years combined in arrivals and departures.
People around the United States aren't familiar with the Great Lakes history, and when you start delving deep into lighthouse history, you become indoctrinated to how important they were to navigation, to the development of the United States economy, the building of all the locks and the channels and things. It's actually a fascinating subject.
I was fortunate enough to write the nomination that got Grosse Point Lighthouse National Historic Landmark designation from the Department of the Interior, and I really tried to hammer that home in the nomination form, that Grosse Point stands at an axis that connected the Atlantic seaboard through the Hudson River, the Erie Canal, the Great Lakes, the St. Clair River, of course, up through the Straits of Mackinac, connecting all of that with Chicago and through the Illinois-Michigan Canal, through the Illinois River to the Mississippi River, south to New Orleans. It was an inland transportation network that was extremely important to the development of not only the East, but also the development of the West. You know, not having the the water transportation routes that we did, specifically Great Lakes kind of transportation routes. Of course, there's always the Missouri River and the river routes, but the railroads were beginning to take precedence over the maritime transportation network, but it was really the maritime transportation network, and that one specifically, that got things started. And then the railroads would ship all of the material westward.
Yeah, it remains important to this day.
Yeah.
And growing up on the West Coast and being educated on the West Coast, as a student, we knew about the Great Lakes. I mean, I knew where they were. I had no idea what they were all about. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't until I started becoming interested in lighthouses that I understood the magnitude of the lakes. And one added point, when I first started going to visit lighthouses on the Great Lakes, getting out on the water, being on Lake Michigan is unlike being on an ocean. It's a different feel. It smells different. It tastes different. Obviously, it doesn't have any salt. The lakes are special in the world. And, learning more about lighthouse preservation gives you all those great experiences and educational opportunities.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. As I said, my interest when I had this job, when I finally got this job, wasn't really lighthouses, but it came to be. And I was fortunate enough to be a guest curator at the Shedd Aquarium in Chicago, their special exhibits program. I was in the queue for 5 years. I actually did 2 exhibits for them. One of them was on the development of lighthouses, the history and development of lighthouses. I did it on an international scale, but in order to really understand more about lighthouses in this country, I took it upon myself to travel quite a bit and went around all of the Great Lakes in addition to coastal sites and maritime coastal sites. And it was just a tremendous eye-opener for me how important lighthouses have been to this country.
This light station, Grosse Point Light Station, has been honored by being one of the small number of light stations that is designated a National Historic Landmark. What else is special about this light station that led to that designation? What about the buildings, the place itself that led to that designation?
Well, the degree of integrity of the buildings had a lot to do with it. We have the only remaining second-order lighthouse lens, Fresnel lens, in situ. Left on the Great Lakes. It's still operating. It's as a private aid to navigation. All of that made carried a lot of weight with the committee, I'm told.
The lighthouse tower was built of brick, but in 1913 it was encased in cement or concrete?
Actually, in 1914. It's interesting you should bring that up because before you showed up here, I was retouching some photographs that Candace Clifford had sent me of that period. Mm-hmm. So it was, I think it was July 24th, 1914.
Okay.
And the reason for these pictures and documentation was that the exterior brick of the lighthouse, and indeed the entire lighthouse, was constructed of soft cream city brick. Milwaukee, long before it was known as the beer capital of the country. I don't even know whether people realize that these days or not. Milwaukee was known as the Cream City, so it's called, the brick that was produced there is called Cream City brick, and it was very soft. So in 1914, the exterior brick on the light tower had deteriorated to such an extent that the federal government needed to find a way to protect the tower, and they put a 3.5-inch facing of concrete, which really smoothed out the light tower, and honestly has done a very good job of preserving the light. It needs to be recoated. Right now we're using a product called Thorough Coat or Thorough Seal, I think it used to be called. But it's really held up well over the years.
I understand there was some fairly major restoration work done not too many years ago.
If you stick around long enough, like I have, you can actually accomplish something. I've gone through 2 really major restoration periods here, both using federal government money through the Transportation Enhancement Program. I was fortunate enough to write a grant, 2 grants, that got us. I don't know how much money it really was, but it was hundreds of thousands of dollars. I know I had to go back several times because it wasn't enough, and they upped the ante for us. I was dealing with some very good people here in Illinois. It was federal money, but it was administered by the Illinois Department of Transportation. And there are not that many lighthouses in Illinois. They focused on helping us out a lot.
Right.
Recoding the tower, preservation of the buildings, reconstruction of the north wing of the building. There's been quite a lot of activity here. The 90s were a really good period of time.
Is there any work on the horizon? Anything in the pipeline at this point?
There's always something in the pipeline. Right when I think I have the place at a balance, something comes along to shake that balance, and
so you fear the walls are going to collapse as you leave on the day you leave?
Or the tower coming down, Yeah. For those that aren't aware, Grosse Point is in a pretty affluent neighborhood, and I can just sometimes envision the light tower falling on these houses around here, and what would cause that. And
looks pretty sturdy to me.
Yeah. One of the things that I'm kind of curiously most proud of in all the years that I was here was I was able to get the Historic American Building Survey interested in coming here. So the lighthouse is part of the Federal Historic American Building Survey, and the reason I bring that up specifically is because they looked at the tower and how straight it was, and there was only a 3-inch deviation to the south, interesting, which is where the homes are. But at any rate, they said that is absolutely nothing for the amount of time that the tower has been standing.
Is the tower open for climbing, and what other buildings are open?
From November through March, we're virtually we're dormant.
Hibernation. Yeah.
We're in hibernation, or we're dormant. But if you come to visit the lighthouse, first of all, I recommend phoning to just get an update and make sure that there isn't any restoration in progress that's going to inhibit our tour season. Or you can visit our website at grossepointlighthouse.net. We have an interpretive area. In the keeper's quarters, we have a terrific, I think it's terrific, film video that is shown, an exhibit on the Lady Elgin, trip up to the top of the light tower. It takes about an hour, and it is a scheduled tour. It's not just to come at any time. So if you go to the website, you'll pretty much find out all the information you need to pay a visit to us, and we certainly hope that people listening out there would do that.
What's your favorite thing about Grosse Point Light Station?
The history. Just generally speaking, I think that, we didn't get a chance to talk about Orlando Metcalf Poe, who signed off on the plans. Whether there's some argument about whether it's his design or not. Just generally speaking, there are only a handful of Poe lighthouses on the Great Lakes, but if you live in one like I do, or manage one, there's a little bit more panache attached to it, because he was a central figure in helping with the Civil War on the north, the side of the Union forces. And he was a terrific engineer on the Great Lakes, just a very, very interesting, led a very interesting life, very accomplished guy. And to have lived in place that he had a part in building, designing, whatever it may have been, is just, I get a big kick out of that. And some of the people that have been here, too, are very interesting characters. So, I join a long and illustrious list of interesting characters, and interesting in quotation marks. Yeah.
The Lighthouse Society headquarters in Washington, we're at a light station, so we get this all the time. People approach us and they say, well, what is it like to be a lighthouse keeper? I don't really feel like I'm a lighthouse keeper. I don't live on site, but you could be considered a lighthouse keeper. How do you feel about that question? How do you like being a lighthouse keeper?
Well, I do get that question quite often. Technically, I'm director of the Lighthouse Park District, but I'm known whether I like it or not as a keeper. I wrote a book on the history of Grosse Point Lighthouse, and it won an award from the American Association for State and Local History. I was at Northeastern Illinois University at the time, and the dean of the the dean of the College of Arts and Sciences found out that they had a faculty member that won this award, and they sent out a press release that got picked up, and I became known as the Lighthouse Professor. So it says Lighthouse Keeper, and then later went on to call me the Lighthouse Professor because of that in my academic association. So, it's kind of awkward. Somebody calls you a Lighthouse Keeper. I think this could get into an overlong discussion of what constitutes a keeper today versus what constituted a keeper appointed by the federal government. I think these local government appointments are all over the place across the board. You always find yourself doing something different. But I'm sure the keepers did as well, federal keepers, that is. So there's some similarities and a lot of differences.
I think the people that are approaching us have a very romantic notion of what being a lighthouse keeper was like. I mean, we get emails and letters all the time about wanting to be keepers. I want to be remote and staying in a lighthouse and be away from it all. How do you feel about that? Is there a romantic notion to what you do?
I hate to throw cold water on that. You can have that romantic notion, and it's all well and good, and I think it's needed in some respects. But I think most of the reason for my success here is because I've kept a very pragmatic outlook towards the job, towards the position. And people will come up to me and they'll say, well, it's so romantic to be here. And, if you want it to be romantic, it can be romantic. A corollary to that is people are always asking me, is it haunted? Well, if you want a place to be haunted, if you're sensitive to those kinds of things, you're going to find apparitions, or what you people would think are apparitions, or it's kind of falls along the same lines. I think it's terrific that people have this romantic inclination towards lighthouses, but I don't think I do.
Well, because you were appointed and because you've been here, will have been here 37 years, you may very well be the longest serving lighthouse keeper in recent history.
Yes, I guess that's
certainly
correct.
The longest-serving lighthouse professor in recent history.
Right. Yeah. Well, I got it in writing with the letterhead on it, so it had an impact on me too.
For all intents and purposes, you are very much a modern-day lighthouse keeper, along with a lighthouse professor and historian and preservationist and everything else. I want to thank you again, Don, for hosting us here for these couple of days and for spending time with us today. It's been a rare pleasure and my first time here, and I've enjoyed it immensely. Thank you again for everything you've done for this lighthouse and for the lighthouse world for, I don't want to say for so many years that...
There are a couple more left.
There's a lot left, I'm sure.
Yet.
Yeah, exactly. I'm about the same age, so I don't want to say you're old. So thank you so much, Don. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
You're very welcome. I enjoyed it very much.
Let me tell you a little bit more about Don Terras. He's the recipient of many awards, including the Marjorie Perkins Award from the Evanston Preservation Commission and the Richard H. Dryhouse Award from the Landmarks Preservation Council of Illinois. Both awards are the highest possible honor accorded within the state of Illinois. He's a recipient of the Lifetime Achievement Award from Evanston for his many years of exceptional stewardship at Grosse Point Lighthouse, and has also received the American Lighthouse Council's F. Ross Holland Distinguished Service Award. He is also the author of the books Grosse Point Lighthouse, Landmark to Maritime History, and Culture and Lighthouses of Chicago Harbor. The interview you just heard was recorded in November 2019 in the middle of a few days of USLHS meetings at Grosse Point. While I was there, I was impressed by the beauty of the lighthouse and its second-order lens, and by the scope of the excellent museum and the Keeper's House. I was also impressed by the generosity of Don Terras, who served as our host that week. Don's more than 40 years of management at Grosse Point and his general support of preservation have made him a legend in the lighthouse community. Be sure to check out uslhs.org to learn more about tours, preservation grants, and everything the U.S. Lighthouse Society offers. If you listen on Apple Podcasts, please rate and review us. And if you are involved with any kind of historic preservation, thank you for all you do. We're all on the same team. We'll be back with a brand new episode next week featuring Beavertail Lighthouse in Rhode Island. For now, to all our regular listeners and our new ones, thanks so much for listening, and keep a good light.
Shine, let it shine, let it shine.